So I guess I have sort of a love-hate relationship with MIDI controllers because I've been using different ones throughout the years and none of them ever really have stuck in my workflow until I discovered the Akai APC40. But even that one has had a bit of a bumpy ride in my studio because I only recently started using it again after buying it several years ago and putting it on a shelf for a couple of years. What happened? Several years ago I decided I wanted a MIDI controller not just for keys but for control of the DAW, in my case Ableton Live. I wanted to be able to do live mixing and automation recording with a nice interface. And this led me to buy Ableton's Push 1, which had just been released, I think, sometime in 2015. And after experimenting with that controller for a few months, I decided it really wasn't for me because I thought it was too complicated and I sold it again. So I continued on doing my music production stuff without a controller to record automation and also hardly ever using keys or hardware step sequencers. All just in the box with a mouse and keyboard. Then a few years later I decided I wanted to start recording arrangements in real time, what I call doing live arrangements, where you start and stop clips on the Ableton session view and record automation and it all ends up on the timeline, and by the time you have done 5 or 6 minutes of this you've basically created a complete track. And for this I found that the Akai APC40 was a very good tool. It's kind of similar to Push in certain ways, but it's much simpler. And it has faders and knobs that are more like a traditional mixer with volume faders and send effects and the like. I also found it was just very easy to use. There are not a lot of modes, not a lot of sub-level menu sort of things. It's basically just plug into Live and go. So I think when I started using the APC40, it really helped me create less robotic and predictable arrangements. Now this is a problem that I encountered, and I think a lot of producers in electronic music have the same experience here, especially in techno music, where it's quite difficult to create a track that has sort of an ebb and flow without sounding too robotic and predictable, without sounding like it's coming out of a DAW. Because the very nature of techno music, it is actually sort of mechanical, robotic and non-human sounding. But if you listen to good techno music, you will find there's always a little bit of imperfection, a little bit of a human element there that makes it sound less robotic and sterile and cold. Now there are different ways to achieve a more human sounding, less sterile sound. One of which, for instance, is mixing in noise and having lots of automation going, slow LFOs and stuff that shifts the sound over time. But the fact remains that when producing techno, it is kind of hard to make it not sound like it's coming out of a computer. And I found that a controller like the APC40 really helped me get this more spontaneous feel in my music. And then at some point I stopped using it, and I don't really remember why. I think it might have been maybe just to make space on my desk for a shiny new synthesizer that I bought, but also probably because after a while of working with this controller I sort of got bored with it. There are some downsides to it, and the main thing is that you can only work with what you have. So you create a loop or a part in the session view in Live beforehand, and then you can play that, you can start and stop clips and record automation, but you can never really add to it with the APC40 because it's not made to do sequences or program notes, play notes. It does allow you to change the parameters on effects and instruments, but it's limited in the sense that you cannot really create new parts with it. So whether that was the reason or a number of factors, the APC40 sat on a shelf next to my desk for about 2 years. And only recently have I rediscovered it. So what happened is I actually needed the APC40 to do some of my production challenge videos. Namely the ones where I do a 10-minute challenge where I only give myself 10 minutes time to create a complete track from start to finish. So the way these challenges work is that I use more or less the first 5 minutes to create sequences and find some interesting sounds. And the second 5 minutes are used to create a live arrangement, so arranging in real time, and that's where the APC40 comes in, because like I said, it's great for doing that kind of work. starting and stopping clips, recording volume automation, send effects and changes on the instruments and effects themselves. It does all that and it helps me create a complete piece of music with a start, a middle and an end in exactly the time that the piece of music takes to listen. So this, when you think about it, is really insanely efficient. And it turns out that the limitations of the APC40 aren't really much of a problem, because after I've done this live arrangement thing, I can always go back, edit the automation, change stuff, add parts, delete parts, all that sort of stuff. But at least a 5 or 6 minute piece of music, a full-length track, the skeleton of a full-length track is already there. And that's great. It's a huge time saver, and it also sometimes causes happy accidents. When something cool happens that I didn't expect, that wouldn't have happened if I had been arranging with a mouse or a keyboard. So that's definitely an added bonus as well. So the situation in my studio at the moment is that the APC40 has found its spot back on my desk. And because it's there and always on when I'm using live, it's also very useful just for small pieces of automation, not just whole arrangements. And even the play button and the faders are very useful just when listening back to the music that I'm creating. So if you're the kind of producer that always just draws arrangement, copying and pasting clips and drawing automation and only using the mouse and the keyboard, you might want to consider using something like the APC40 or Ableton's push controller instead. I found that this way of working really does give a more human, organic feel to the music you create, and it can save time as well as generate some happy accidents and some creative stuff that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So let me know in the comments what you think. Are you a completely mouse and keyboard bound producer, or do you like to work with a controller? I would love to hear your opinion and your experiences on that. So that's going to be it for this video. Please like the video if you enjoyed it and consider subscribing if you want to see more of these kinds of videos. Also, the production challenges that I mentioned before, they are all on my channel, so check them out. In any case, thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.